In May, everything comes alive. The garden stretches, the animals settle in, and we get to work. It's the season of building, planting, and hoping. We live in the city, but that hasn't stopped us from growing over 1,000 pounds of food a year, right here, with kids, a full life, and not a ton of land. This month, we started by preparing beds. It took several days of pulling weeds, adding compost, feeding the soil that feeds us. We have been weeding beds over the last few days, and we still have this bed and 2 more beds to go. And Glenn is going to be able to lay out the drip irrigation lines. Because we are cutting these beds short, he kind of has to rework the lines again. Otherwise, that would be something that we wouldn't have to do every year. I think one of the things that Glenn and I regret is not putting borders on our beds, because it's really hard to separate the wood chips from the beds. And if we ever let the chickens out in the garden, they just kind of mix everything and it just kind of becomes a mess. We do have a few raised beds. We knew we couldn't afford to get all raised beds for our big garden, but I do wish we would have done some kind of border, maybe even with some wood or something to keep the soil separate. So many exciting things are happening here. One of them being that we added rabbits to our backyard homestead. We've been thinking about this for a while now. Rabbits are quiet, low maintenance, and honestly, just a joy to have around. But they're so incredibly useful. Rabbit manure is one of the best natural fertilizers out there. It doesn't even need composting before you use it in the garden. So stay tuned as we will continue to share in this journey with you. If you have any tips or stories about raising rabbits, please drop them in the comments. We'd love to learn from you.
This is our shelter that we built for the bunnies, and I'm pretty pleased with it and our work together. What we did was we took 2 camel panel and we put them together. We tied them with zip ties, anchored them to the ground, and then we covered it with a tarp. And so it's a really good environment for our new bunnies to thrive. This is the only time of the day in which there's actually sunlight directly on them as the sun is setting. But there's not a lot, it's just a little bit that kind of fills it in there. Otherwise, they're really protected from the elements and a nice little spot where they can thrive. There is a spot that we left open in the back where there's ventilation so that the air can flow in and out so it doesn't get stuffy in this little area or too hot. I've been working on our drip irrigation system and redesigning it a little bit. We've had to change some of the length of the lines because we're adding a little bit bigger of a chicken run over there. So I've had to kind of cut them and resize them and get the correct fittings so that we can continue to use this system appropriately. It saves so much time with the drip irrigation system. On top of that, it saves a lot of water as well for the drip irrigation to get right to the roots and right at the base of the plant. We added a new bed to one of the back areas of our garden. We had to extend this drip irrigation main water line to this section here, and then it kind of did an L, a little bit of a bend here, and went and connected to the water that's in this raised bed. And so that creates a better loop as well. It's always good to have that water flowing through in a loop instead of coming to an end. And I wasn't able to do this last year, so it's a really great connection, and it should have better water circulation in this section of the garden. So this is the moment of truth. This is where we're going to see if everything is connected right and it works. All right, let's give it a shot. I see a slight little leak right here that I will have to fix. There's water coming out quite a bit right here. All right, I'm going to check now to see if the lines are dripping. If you can look here, down here, we do see this bed. They're dripping out quite nicely. This is a good sign that at least the system is working. If you move to the other bed, it looks like they're doing pretty good. I've had a lot of problems getting water to these raised beds, and it seems like the system is working really well right now. So that is a big win right now. It's a little bit of a challenge to check these because They have the netting already, and we have huge plants growing, but there was really no other way. We had to already plant these in time and then put the irrigation system around them in hopes that it's working. There it is. We do see some that are dripping. I'll have to go through this bed pretty thoroughly to make sure they're all working, because we don't want any of them to dry out, because this is really what we rely on throughout the summer. There is a problem here. This line right here is spraying out. It looks like it's cut. I'm gonna have to replace this section right here because we really need a clean fitting so that it doesn't give too much water to this area. Overall, I'm pretty pleased with the project. I'm pretty pleased that we got it all done. And there's a few things that I need to fix, but then it's on to the next project.
All our beds are ready for planting, which is so exciting, but we are not going to be able to do that today. And we have this entire section in the back of the garden right up against the wall that needs to be weeded because we have plans for this area here. So we cannot let all these weeds go wild. We are going to use every bit of space that we can. And if you remember, last year I had sunflowers growing up against this wall, and we're going to do even more this year. And I'm excited to share that with you later on. It is time to get dinner going, so we're gonna go inside and have dinner. We also just got our materials for our chicken run, and we are so excited for that. We are so ready, and I think the chickens are ready for their new space. I am finally gonna be transplanting my onion seedlings into this bed over here. They are very tiny, and I have never transplanted seedlings this small and pathetic. But there are two reasons why I decided to keep going with this. One, because starting onions from seeds takes a long time. It is too late for me to start from seeds. Even though these are pretty sad looking, I want to see if these actually grow. Sometimes, no matter what we do, we don't get the results that we want, and that's okay. And I want to give myself grace, and I want you to be able to give yourself grace in situations like this. I did everything just like I did last year, and my onion seedlings were amazing last year. The roots are actually looking really good. So there is some hope there. And I prepared this bed already, and I made 2 trenches, and I amended them with Trifecta Plus, which is what I like to do. All I have to do is kind of tease this root ball out a little bit, and then I will be pulling out each little plant. In the past, I have planted hundreds of carrots, and I am one of those people who just likes to dig a hole in the ground and will stick each of these little plants, but it does take a long time. And recently I watched a video from More Than Farmers, and I saw the way that Michelle plants them, and it looks so much more time efficient. So I'm going to try that. I am planting each of these about 6 inches apart. One of the things I like about this drip irrigation system is that each of the holes are spaced 6 inches apart, and that is such a good guide for me because I am putting each plant right by the holes. According to Michelle, you can just cover them. And I'm a little unsure how to do that because as I'm trying to cover them, they're like falling over. So I think I'm just gonna kind of pinch them on both sides. What she does is just pushes the dirt over to one side and they should be okay. Okay, maybe that's working out. It makes me feel like they are a little bit deeper than I normally plant them. I am trying to decide if this is faster. Maybe not so much for me yet because I'm not experienced in this method and I'm a little hesitant as I'm doing this, but maybe in the long run it will be faster. Some of these are so tiny that they're just kind of getting lost. This is my 4th row using this planting method, and I think each row has gotten better. I definitely feel like I'm going a lot faster than if I were doing it one hole at a time. I'm still learning this method, but so far I am liking it. I wanted to be able to harvest my onions at the beginning of July so that I could use this bed for a second crop. But because I'm planting these so late, I won't be able to get a second planting in this bed and my next bed, which is also going to be onions, and I'm very disappointed about that. So I had everything mapped out and figured out how it was supposed to work, but things don't always work out the way we want them. So I have to rearrange some things, and I have to think about where I'm going to put some of those crops that I won't be able to plant in these beds. Glenn and the boys have been working on weeding this area in the back. This is more than just a walkway, so it is important for us that it is weeded, because we are actually going to be planting some things back here. So what they're doing is very important. I planted another bed of onions here. So in these two beds that I planted today, I already have over 200 onion seedlings here. This is really exciting, although I am very nervous because I told you a little bit earlier that these onion seedlings don't look very good. But I'm hopeful that they're going to recover and we will have a good harvest. This year, one of my goals is to grow enough onions for an entire year. And that is a very ambitious goal because our family eats so many onions. We would need at least 600 onions in order for us to have enough for the year. And because these are the only two beds that are specifically dedicated to growing onions, I will find different spots throughout the garden where I can interplant these onions with other crops that need to be spaced out farther apart. Here's another bed where I'm planting onions, but this is not an onion bed alone. I will also be planting zucchini here. So I'm only planting 2 rows of onions to go in between the zucchinis. Now, I know what you're thinking, zucchinis expand, and there is no way I can grow onions in between the zucchinis. But this year I'm going to try something new, and I am going to grow zucchinis vertically. So the hope is that as I train the zucchinis up and I prune the leaves at the bottom, the onions are going to have plenty of space in between the 2 zucchini rows to grow really well. I have to get really creative about finding space everywhere in the garden. I definitely think this method of planting is a lot faster than just going hole by hole. So I am very thrilled because planting onions is one of those things that takes forever. But this is working out really well and I am so pleased. They are down to the last little bit of this strip, and then we will be ready to start planting in that area. But we're not going to get to that today. There's a lot of weeds over there still, and we decided not to mess with those because that is going to become part of the new chicken run. So we're going to let the chickens enjoy those. Raising 18 chickens has been both a joy and a challenge. Every day, weather permitting, we've been bringing them outside so they can stretch their wings, scratch around, and just be chickens. They've clearly outgrown their brooder, so each morning we carry them out, and each evening we bring them back into the garage. It's been a bit of a process, but worth it to keep them healthy and active.
And one problem we did not think about was the gnats. They're everywhere. So annoying.
Today feels like a big milestone. Our chickens will finally get a larger run, something they've needed for a while. I'm so grateful that Glenn took the lead on this project. With a few days off work, he poured his time into garden upgrades, and this was at the top of the list. He chose to use chain link fence panels for the run. I'll be honest, I was a little skeptical at first, but now that it's done, I love how it turned out, and so do the chickens. In this bed, I'm going to be planting green beans. I have the Blue Lake Bush variety, and there will be over 200 plants in this bed. I always like to space my green beans about 6 inches apart. And I already went ahead and made holes all along the 4 rows over here. Now I can just go ahead and drop a seed in each one of these. I know sometimes it's better to put 2 seeds just to ensure germination, but I will not have enough seeds to fill this bed if that's what I do. So I'm just going to do 1 and hope for the best.
It's time to create a supportive structure for my berries to thrive and to grow. Last year, while we were doing this, it was our first go at having berries in a berry patch. And what happened was they grew so long that some of them began to snap because they didn't have that support. And so I'm hopeful with this, I will be able to provide a trellis-like structure so that they can grow and thrive and bear more fruit this season. So I have installed the 4 T-posts. Now I'm going to wrap this 12 gauge wire around the posts and string them in between. I'm going to create 3 layers or 3 tiers of support for the berries so that they are able to grow and we can lean them right against the wire as they grow taller.
A few days ago, I transplanted over 200 seedlings into my garden beds. I am excited because those seedlings that I transplanted are showing some growth. So today I'm going to transplant the last of my onion seedlings. I have these 3 pots, so that's probably between 80 to 90 onion seedlings that I'll be able to transplant. So I have prepared this bed already, and I made 2 trenches again, and I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing I did last time. I really think this helps me go a lot faster. That is a really good thing. Even though I'm planting onions in this bed, this is actually a cucumber bed. And I'm only planting 2 rows of onions in between the 2 rows of cucumbers. This is a method that I've been using for the last 2 seasons, and it has worked really well. Onions and cucumbers are really good companion plants. Companion planting is something that allows me to grow a lot of food in a small growing space. I still have a few onion seedlings left, so I am literally just finding any spot that I can use to grow these. So right now I am in my asparagus bed, and I am planting these onions in between the asparagus. They might get really shaded out because this asparagus is already really tall, but I would rather try than just let these go to waste. So in this bed, I'll be planting 2 rows of carrots. Just like the onions that I planted, these carrots are going to be in between 2 rows of zucchini. This whole situation over here is experimental. I normally like to sow my carrot seeds very heavy, but I just realized that I am running really low on seeds. So I'm hoping I have enough for these 2 rows at least. So I'm trying not to put in as much as I normally do. And I shouldn't worry about it because I always get good germination with my carrots. I like to cover my carrot seeds with either a piece of cardboard or a piece of wood, and that really helps the soil stay moist and the seedlings will sprout no problem. I like to pat them down just a little bit. I want them to get good contact with the soil. That's also going to help them stay nice and moist. These seeds should sprout in about 7 to 10 days. I have to make sure I pay attention. So maybe like on around day 5, I'm going to start checking to see if any of them are sprouting. And if they are, I will need to remove the cardboard. We grow a ton of food each year, not because we have acres of land or endless time or all the answers, but because we keep showing up, one bed at a time, one seed at a time. Some days it's muddy boots and sore backs. Some days it's small hands helping or a single row planted between errands and dinner, but it all adds up. That night, a storm hit us hard. After learning about possible tornadoes, I'm so glad we decided to take the rabbits in the garage. Their shelter didn't make it through the night, but it gave us a clear idea of what we needed to do to improve it. The very next morning, ready or not, it was time for the chicks to move outside permanently. So Glenn and Gabriel spent the day putting the coop together, making sure it was secure and comfortable. Homesteading isn't about doing everything. It's about doing what you can, where you are, with what you have. It's turning a backyard or even a patio into something that feeds your family, body, and soul. We didn't start here. We started small, and every season we've learned a little more, grown a little more. If you've ever wondered if it's possible to grow real food in a small space, let this be your reminder. It absolutely is. We remembered something from our first year with chickens. They don't always know where to sleep unless you show them. So that evening, Glenn gently placed the chicks into their new coop, now warmed with a heat panel and plenty of space for them to settle in. And the next evening, as the sun began to set, every single chick made their way into the coop on their own. This is how we grow food in the city. Not all at once, but day by day. Not perfectly, but persistently. It doesn't take a farm. It doesn't take perfection. It takes small spaces used wisely. It takes planning, patience, and showing up, even when you're tired. This is my broccoli bed, and so far it has been a big disappointment. These broccolis have already started developing a head, but these heads are really small, and if I don't harvest them today, they're going to start flowering, and I don't want that. So what I'm actually going to do is just harvest all the broccoli that I have in this bed, no matter how small they are, and then I'm going to get rid of these plants. I will use this bed for something else. Our springs in Michigan are always so unpredictable. So I knew I was taking a risk. Some of these plants have little side shoots. They have these tiny little broccoli heads. I'm going to harvest those anyway, as little as they are. I don't care. They are totally usable, and if we're using them like in a stir fry or in soup, like it really doesn't matter how small they are. Last week I already started harvesting some of these, and we have been feeding the broccoli leaves to our bunnies, and they enjoy them so much. Even though it wasn't a huge success for us, it is going to be a really great treat for our bunnies and the chickens too. This is about how much broccoli I got from all 15 broccoli plants. So it's pretty sad, but I did harvest an amount like this last week. But I'm happy that these are going to go to the bunnies and the chickens, and they are going to enjoy it. I also have a couple of cabbage plants here, and I'm actually going to leave them here and see how they do. They're already starting to develop a head, which is great. But I'm not going to cover this row again with the insect netting that I had. So we'll see what happens. If they get attacked by moths and caterpillars, it's okay. We're going to have extra food for the chickens. We'll be able to give these to the bunnies as well. This bed has a lot of weeds, so that's another thing I'm going to be doing besides removing these broccoli plants. And then I also have to thin out my carrot plants. These carrot plants have gotten so big, and I really should have thinned them out weeks ago, but I didn't. But I don't think it's too late. I'm going to do that today anyway. I also planted 3 cauliflower plants, and these are not looking good. I am just going to get them out of this bed. I don't look at it as a loss. I think it was a really good experiment for me. I will try to grow broccoli and cauliflower again in the fall. We hadn't planned on expanding the garden this year, but when my onions went in later than expected and I realized I wouldn't be able to get a second crop from that bed, it felt like the right time to add another. I'm so grateful for Glenn and Gabriel and their willingness to jump in and help bring these last-minute ideas to life.
Well, as I was preparing this space here, I ran into a bunch of rocks. Not really sure exactly what it is, but not just even rocks, but like hunks of cement, just really big ones. And it's right in the way of what we want to grow. So I've been going down much deeper than I wanted to, but it's just chunk after chunk after chunk, and pretty soon I have a kind of a big hole here. But I'm trying my best just to try to level it out and get most of the big rocks out.
We grow over 1,000 pounds of food, not because we have more land than you, but because we've learned to see what's possible where we are. If you're dreaming of growing more food, start with what you have. A few pots, a raised bed, a corner of your yard. Start small, grow steady, and keep going. You can do this too, and we'll be right here cheering you on. Today is the day that we want to finish with everything, and we just want to be done, and we just want to let the garden do its thing. So we have a lot of small projects to finish today, and I'll show you what Glenn and Gabriel are working on in a second. And I will also be transplanting all our seedlings and also planting seeds for our summer garden. In this bed here, I'm going to be planting some peppers. I think I can fit about 12 plants in this area right here. I am spacing them about a foot apart. I am not going to put a trellis or a support system yet. Once they get a little bit bigger, I will put something in there. I am growing 2 different types of sweet peppers, California Wonder and also red corno di toro. And then I'm also growing some hot peppers like jalapeno and banana peppers, and I will plant those in a different area to stay away from our sweet peppers. These seedlings are not very big, but I know they are going to grow very well and be very productive, just like we had them last year. They weren't very big when we transplanted them. They were probably about this size, and they worked out just fine. I normally like to grow with some Trifecta Plus, but I ran out. So I'm just using warm castings today, and I think they will do fine. And if I feel like I need to add some fertilizer later in the season, I will do that, but for now this will be good. I'm so excited to finally have a dedicated space for growing flowers. Their beauty, their color, there's just something about them that brings me so much joy. We decided that it is important to remove a top layer of soil because this soil is terrible here. It's actually a lot of sand from the construction of this patio a couple of years ago. Nothing really grows well here except for grass and weeds. We tried growing some things there last year and it didn't do very well. So this is a lot of work, but it's totally worth it because it is going to make a big difference. Even though this is mainly a tomato bed, I am going to be planting 2 rows of carrots in between the 2 rows of tomatoes. And I'll be planting this Nantes half-long carrots. Never heard of this before, never planted it before. But I ran out of my Danvers half-long seeds, and this is what we could find at the local grocery store. I'll be planting 2 rows right here, and then we'll get our tomato planted. I don't worry about seed depth when I plant these. In the beginning, I would stress out about seed depth. Sometimes the seed packet says like not to cover it with soil. I found that that doesn't help actually. So I just cover it, even if it says like 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch. I don't worry about it. I just very lightly pat the soil, and then it's gonna be just fine. Gabriel and Glenn have been getting this space ready for planting. They're basically just raking the wood chips that we have over here to the sides, and we're gonna add a little bit of compost in this entire area over here, and that's where we're going to be planting our sunflowers again. And this year we will also be growing tomatoes over here. Nico and I finished digging holes in this bed for planting our tomatoes, and we like to plant our tomatoes deeper than what they already are, and we will be planting these maybe about this deep. So in each of these holes I'm going to put 3 handfuls of worm castings, and then we're going to get to planting. Because I want to plant these deeper, I do have to remove the first few leaves at the bottom, and then this is ready to go in. So it might look scary because a lot of it is going to end up covered in dirt, and that's okay. In the next few days, we're going to see a lot of new growth. We debated for a while whether we should have planted them sooner, but we have had such terrible weather and we did not feel confident that they would be able to withstand the really cold night temperatures. So we ended up not transplanting them until now. And we weren't able to have them out here in the sun because it was cold and rainy. I think they suffered a little bit, but they are going to recover really well in the next few days. We finished planting the tomatoes here and the 2 rows of carrots. So Nico is giving this a really thorough watering. That is very important right after we transplant for the plants to get really good water. And then we will cover the 2 rows where we planted carrot seeds. We will cover that with cardboard. I'm creating a trench over here because this is where I'm going to be planting the sunflower seeds. I will plant them about 6 inches apart, even though they need more space than that. And if all of them germinate, I will thin some of them out. I would rather have more than not enough, because once I get these planted and then I have other things planted in the front, I'm not going to be able to get back there and mess with that. Also, birds like to eat them. There's always little critters that come after our sunflower seedlings. These sunflower seeds are supposed to be planted about 1/2 inch deep, and I don't know what that is in terms of this trench, but this looks about right to me. I think this is going to be so much faster than digging each individual hole. I also realized that the line that I am creating is not very straight, but I do have to confess that I am a recovering perfectionist, and I am okay with this now after years of trying to let go of perfectionism. Done is better than perfect, and I'm okay with this crooked line. We measured the length of this bed and it is 43 feet long. So we're gonna have a lot of sunflowers planted here, and it's also gonna be long enough for us to plant out the rest of our tomato seedlings. These need to be spaced out about 12 to 18 inches. Once the seeds germinate, I will space them appropriately. I'm sure as I'm covering these up, some of these seeds are a little bit deeper than 1/2 inch, but that's okay. I don't think the seeds will mind. These seeds are very, very big, and this is certainly a lot faster than just doing 1 seed at a time and making 1 little hole. So I am okay with this method. I am getting these tomato planted here in this sunflower and tomato bed. And these are about 2 feet apart. I am planning on maybe putting some basil in between the tomato plants. We'll see. This entire row is eventually going to have a cattle panel trellis. And that is going to serve 2 purposes. It will be for the tomatoes, so the tomatoes can grow up in a trellis like we have been doing for the last several years. But it will also be a support for the sunflowers. Last year, our sunflowers got so huge. These are mammoth sunflowers. Some of our sunflowers started falling over. So that just created a little bit of a mess. So the goal is that this cattle panel trellis that we're going to put in this entire row is going to help support that as well. So in total, we have 30 tomato plants. This should be good for us for the year. Since I'm done planting tomatoes in this row over here, I'm going to use the space to plant more peppers. I was having a hard time finding space for these anyway. I plant peppers about 1 foot apart. So in this area, I'm planting 9 peppers. And I still have more peppers left. So I'm just going to see later on if I have any random little spaces here and there where I can plant peppers. I did that last year. I even planted some in our walkway that is full of wood chips. I just pulled back the wood chips and planted some pepper plants, and they did great. At the end of this tomato and sunflower row, I will be planting some sugar baby watermelon so that they can climb up this trellis. So this entire trellis is going to be watermelon, and we are so excited about this. Last year, we grew our first official watermelon, just one, and it was amazing. But we knew we needed to try something different because what we did last year did not work well. So I'm excited to try this. So I'm going to put 2 plants on each bed. So this one here and also this other tomato bed, because we have the cattle panel trellis here that we want to make sure we are using. Normally these have to be spaced out between 4 to 6 feet apart, but because we're growing them on a trellis, I'm only going to do about 18 inches apart. And I'm putting 3 seeds in each hole just to make sure we have at least one that comes up. This is our cucumber bed, but I have already planted 2 rows of onions that are going to be in between the 2 rows of cucumbers. And those are still very tiny, but they are still alive, so I am going to leave them there. And we also have a lot of volunteer cilantro that we have really been enjoying. So I'm going to try to plant around them because we just love these volunteer cilantros. And these have to be spaced about 6 to 12 inches anyway, so that should be enough. I'm going to have 12 plants on each side, so 24 plants in this bed. And this is a 16-foot long bed, so that will be plenty of space for the cucumbers. Because my basil seedlings are quite sad, I'm actually not going to transplant those. I'm just going to get rid of those and I'm going to start fresh and just plant some basil seeds. I could get starts from the farmer's market, but I'm not in a hurry. We still have a lot of basil in our freezer from last season. Since I planted these tomato plants 2 feet apart, I have plenty of room to put some seeds in there for basil. The seeds are so tiny, so I'm just going to sprinkle a good amount of seeds in there. In this bed, I'm planting more green beans. Yes, we already have another entire bed with over 100 green bean plants in another area. And those are already coming up and growing well. But we need more green beans because we eat a lot of green beans. So I'm going to plant 3 rows over here, and that's going to be about another 100 plants of green beans, and that should be good for us for the summer at least. I don't know if we'll be able to preserve any, but we'll see. These need to be planted about 6 inches apart, so I am just eyeballing it and throwing seeds where I think it's about 6 inches. It goes a lot faster that way if I don't get stuck on trying to do everything perfectly. I could probably use a rake to do this, but I actually like doing this like this because there are some clumps of this compost that are that I need to break up. So using my hands gives me an opportunity to feel those clumps that need to be broken up. Everything that we planted today needs to be watered in really, really well. Some of our beds don't have a drip irrigation, so we have to make sure those ones are watered a couple of times during the day, especially now since we just planted them, until the seeds start germinating. So we did it. We got everything planted. Probably the only thing that we didn't plant are flowers, but that's just gonna have to be another project for another day for me. But we got all the main things planted, and I am so excited because we just wanted to get that done. I wish I could say we can just sit back and relax and let the garden do its thing, but we're moving into a new phase in the garden now. It's not the planting phase, it's the maintenance phase, and so we're going to be doing a lot of that in the next few weeks and months. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.